So hello everybody, welcome back to another video. I'm Olaf Kozlowski from Triple T and I'm here in Antwerp in the Kilipong Hall, the hall of my sponsor, this time without Luc. But I do have the new and improved version of Luc with me, the Tibar Robopong Master, the best table tennis robot that Tibar has to offer you. And so with the Robopong Master, I will of course demonstrate everything that we're going to cover today. And what are we covering today? Well, how to do a chop block. Chop block with backhand, which can be done in both ways, like so or like so. And of course also there's a chop block forehand. Shots that are becoming a bit more popular, a bit more mainstream because of a few high-level players who are implementing it into their game and doing so quite successfully. So today we're going to see the technique of it, we're going to see when to do it, when not to do it, when it is optimal, and what you should expect for the ball that comes afterwards. So let's just cover the technique first of the backhand chop block. First up is the more traditional one, where you go next to the ball like so. I don't think you use that movement pattern so often, apart from maybe in a hook serve, but in like backhand context, this is quite unorthodox. So it's not necessarily something that people are very used to. So of course it takes a lot of feeling. It requires a lot of feeling to get that ball right. Because if you ask me, the goal of a chop block is to use the rotation or the quality of the shot of your opponent and to translate that into awkward, messy rotation that your opponent will have trouble with. And it might also be a last-minute option for somebody if they're, for example, caught by surprise and they just need to put their racket against the ball. So a backhand chop block, you play it a bit downwards. Should you use a lot of wrist acceleration? If you ask me, not so much, but there can be this tiny little nick or this tiny little bit of acceleration with the wrist. You shouldn't be completely rigid because, like I said, it is a shot that requires a lot of feeling. So you should be very relaxed, of course. And so all the other principles that usually apply in backhand or in table tennis, with you standing low, with you leaning forwards, all those things, they still apply here. So here you go against the ball and you go next to the ball, okay? The goal is to hit the ball sideways, and then it is a little bit up to you. Should you play it a bit more downward, then you're going to, of course, create a ball with a bit more side spin and backspin. If you go a bit more next to the ball, like sideways, then your shot will have a bit more side spin, a bit more top spin. I don't think you should focus a lot on the point of contact on the rubber. Mainly what you should focus on is the movement pattern. Am I playing it downwards? Am I going a bit more sideways? All those things, they sort of determine whether your shot will have backspin or whether it will have more side spin. Honestly, there's not that much to it, apart from you staying low and you going next to the ball and trying to hit the ball and play it with a lot of rotation. And the same thing applies for the backhand chop block the other way around. Here, contrary to this backhand chop block, here you're standing behind the ball or maybe even a little bit sideways. Like I said, sometimes you use this shot when you're caught by surprise, when you're too late, and so that's sometimes the last option that you have. Here it is the other way around. You can't touch the ball in front of you. That is quite awkward when you play a backhand chop block like this. So here you play that ball when it comes a little bit more to your middle, to your elbow. So from here on you can really swipe along the ball. Here it is quite awkward to start in this position, then continuing to try and put acceleration. So one more time, when you get a ball in the middle, only then, maybe not only then, mainly then, is where you do this backhand chop block. Try not to lean too much when you do so. Continue to stand a little bit stable. You might want to lean a bit more on your inside leg because that helps you maybe guide the ball along a little bit better. For me, it would be my left leg. For right-handers, would be their right leg, where they just go like so as they play the shot. Here, contrary to the other backhand chop block, your wrist relaxation and wrist acceleration are all the more important. You need a lot more wrist movement, because if you just swipe along with your arm like so, it is quite tough to get that ball on the table, and it is even tougher to get that ball on the table with some decent amount of rotation. So here you really just want to let your wrist fall down. You want to follow along with your wrist, and at the end of the movement go back down. The goal is here not to play like with a backhand topspin. You'll see why I'm comparing it to a backhand topspin. With a backhand topspin, the wrist pattern, the wrist movement pattern is quite the same as it is with this backhand chop block. You see, you start here, you pull your wrist back and you end like so. Contrary to topspin backhand, you're not ending upwards. With the backhand chop block like so, you end by going downward, okay? You see how I keep my arm relatively close to me? How I'm going down with my racket at the end. That is what you want to focus on when doing that backhand chop block. Now, with a forehand chop block, things are quite a bit the same as with this backhand chop block. Here again, try to hit the ball relatively early. I maybe forgot to mention that before, but I don't think it is very useful if you let the ball rise up a lot or even let it drop down again. You really want to make the most of your occasion by playing the ball a little bit more on the bounce. I think that is more useful in terms of rotation, in terms of catching the other guy off guard, or other girl, I don't know. Here, quite the same things apply, like I said, with this backhand chop block. You want to keep your wrist a little bit relaxed. Then again, you don't want to rely too much on wrist acceleration, okay? And here also the goal is, of course, to go alongside of the ball, and then either you go a bit more down if you want to create a bit more downspin or backspin, or you go a bit more next to the ball if you want to create more side spin. Depending on the situation, depending on what you want, that is what you should do. If you stand a little bit far back, or if you get, for example, a ball which is a bit awkward and you don't want to play a counter spin on it, I mean, it is a last minute option, but then you're really chopping it more like a tomahawk. Here, you're playing it more like so, but if you get a ball which is a bit further, then you would maybe do like this. I don't think it's quite an orthodox shot. Then again, none of these shots are. But nevertheless, the goal with the chop block, be it forehand or with backhand, is to play the ball on the bounce. Maybe one last thing though is your foot stance, because with a forehand chop block, I don't think you should focus a lot on how your foot stance is, first of all. Then again, having your, in my case, my left foot, in right-handers' cases, their right foot, having your back foot set in the front, I think sometimes can help you by closing with your shoulders a little bit more. Like here, if I stand a bit more in the backhand with this foot in front, it is a bit awkward to close that ball with my body. If I am standing like so with my right foot in the front, with a forehand chop block, it is not so easy to close that ball with my body. Why do I want to focus on this part? Normally, of course, we play that ball on a topspin of the other guy, or on a shot which has topspin in it. And so that means that by going underneath the ball or by chopping, if we do it regularly, that ball goes out 10 meters or goes to the ceiling. But with a chop block, you need a lot of measures, a lot of things to prevent that ball from going out. One thing, of course, is playing a bit downward, not having your movement swipe on too long. But another thing is to stay very much leaning forward with your shoulders. You really want to close that ball. You don't want to stand too upright. One more time. That's why I think you should have, in my case, my left foot, right-handers' cases, that right foot with the forehand chop block. That's why you want to have this foot in the front, just so you can lean a bit more forward, and that makes life a bit easier on you. So now that we covered the technique part of things, we're going to look more into the tactical side of things. When should you play that ball? But more specifically, when should you not play that ball? Like I said, sometimes it is a last-minute option when people are caught by surprise. They just need to do something, and that is sort of a plan C or a plan D in the game or in the minds of players. Sometimes, of course, people do this willingly or are thinking about doing this beforehand, like with Truls Moregard, for example, who really does this a lot nowadays. But very often you do this when you're too late. I think you should really take advantage of the rotation of the opponent, but also of the direction from where the ball is coming from. Let's just, in all of these cases, not take side spin of the opponent into play. That's just going to complicate things. So let's just say everybody plays a nice, clean, straight topspin with only topspin rotation, no side spin whatsoever, okay? If I get a ball diagonal and I want to do a chop block like this, it will be quite difficult for me to put any meaningful rotation in that ball. First of all, if I go next to that ball, a ball that is already coming this way, and I go next to it, that ball is very much going that direction, okay? Away from the table. If I really want to play it on the table, I should really swipe and go very much sideways, like Truls Moregard does very well. If you see him sometimes play a game where he plays, I don't know, a diagonal receive, he gets the ball back into the backhand, then if he does a chop block, that is one chop block that he does that has mainly side spin in it. It is quite hard to really just go next to the ball or go underneath the ball, because that will make the ball go sideways. To counter that, he really goes like so, just so that the ball can stay on the table. That is quite advanced, so that's why I'm not advising you to do that so much. Instead, if you want to do this chop block, play it on a ball that comes down the line. From here, it is much easier to play with rotation. First of all, play with rotation, play with quality, and play with certainty. A ball that you won't miss so much. It is much easier from here to go next to that ball and still keep the ball on table. Of course, same thing applies here with the forehand ball. I only, or mainly only, want to play a forehand chop block when I get a ball that is coming parallel, that is coming down the line. Because from here on, I can really chop, I can really put a lot of rotation, a lot of side spin, a lot of backspin, a lot of topspin, whatever, into that ball and make it a very tough ball for my opponent to receive. Now, you might have guessed it, if you think about this chop block, then it is a bit the other way around. I wouldn't necessarily do it so much when I get a ball that is coming down the line or towards my middle, okay, from that direction. I don't think I can put that much quality into that ball. You might do it if you're a little bit too late. Then again, I just prefer if you would be on time and just catch that ball properly. But if you get a ball that is coming diagonally, that is a bit more into your middle, then it can be really awkward for your opponent if you play a chop block like so. Also because you can put much more quality into that ball. Because then you can keep that ball a little bit more on the table. You can use the rotation that is into your opponent's shot and turn that and translate that into a lot of chop block rotation. I don't know how to say it. Finally, what should we do with the ball after we played a chop block? It depends on a few different factors. First of all, of course, the rotation. If you played a chop block like so, then there's a lot of side spin rotation in it that turns the ball this way. Your opponent would, of course, if they just put their racket neutrally against the ball, would let that ball go that way because of the side spin. Of course, it is very tough for them if they want to play that ball down the line or towards your forehand just because of the side spin that you put into the ball. Because normally in the rally, if your opponent expects a regular ball back, that means they would stand a little bit further from the table. A regular ball will just travel a bit more further and they would expect that by standing a little bit further from the table. With a chop block, that ball normally comes shorter. And so if they're caught by surprise, and they might still be early enough, then they can go forward and play a topspin. If they're too late and they let that ball drop too much, then they have nothing to do but to push it back, and depending on the quality of your ball, they can't really do much with it apart from just letting the ball go into the general direction or the general area of the side spin that you put into it. If you want to anticipate on that, then of course you stand more in this corner of the table. You can take a backhand, you can take a forehand, whatever suits you. One thing, however, in all of these cases that I'm going to explain is that you should stay close enough. In a lot of cases, your opponent will push that ball back, and so you shouldn't stand too far from the table because then you're going to lose all the advantage yourself. If they're going to play a topspin, if they're still going to take the initiative, it's going to be a slow one, it's going to be a controlled one, because with all the side spin you can't do that much with it. And so then again, you should stay close if you want to control that ball. Now the same thing applies, but in the opposite way with this backhand chop block. Because if I play a chop block like so, then there's not much that my opponent can do apart from playing that ball towards this general area because of the side spin or because of the rotation one more time. And so here we want to await a forehand shot a little bit more. Playing a counter spin, playing first ball, whatever, as long as you don't stand too far from the table. I never would suggest that. And actually basically the same thing applies with this forehand chop block, because also depending on where you're playing, your opponent can't do much with it. Lastly, if you want me to suggest you where you should play these shots, all these chop blocks, then I think you should apply one basic ground rule. Basically, it is a question of playing those chop blocks diagonal. I think that first of all increases your likelihood of playing that ball on the table, but it also increases your chances to win that point, because it is all the more awkward for your opponent to play that shot from that side of the table. If I play a left-hander and I play a chop block like so, then I would want to play it towards their backhand. If I play a chop block like so, or chop block like so, one more time, playing a left-hander because I'm a left-hander, I would want to play that into their forehand. It is quite awkward for them to neutralize that side spin or to play a very fast ball on that, but it might be more easy if they get a ball into their backhand if I play a chop block like so. Because the rotation goes like here, up, they can translate that rotation into speed. But the other way around, that is not possible. And so if I play right-handers, then it would be the other way around. This chop block, I would want to play that into the forehand of a right-hander because it is awkward to catch that ball and to play it with a decent amount of quality or speed. Another chop block like here or like so, I would want to go diagonal. That is why I would want you to play chop blocks diagonal or counter cross in the case of a backhand chop block like so.